talk to me about choosing Dolly Parton.
Well, look at what she's done and how she's led her life. And the way she's done it, these bold things, always with civility and kindness.
Lauren Sanchez and Jeff Bezos, after 2 years of engagement, finally exchanged vows in Venice, Italy, a city famed for its canals, ancient architecture, and timeless romance. Yet for all the grandeur of the location and the spectacle of their 3-day wedding, it became clear that this was not simply another celebrity union, but rather an event that drew both admiration and curiosity. A swirl of whispers and opinions from the moment the first guests arrived. Venice itself seemed to bend around. The couple with gondolas drifting silently under bridges as if holding their breath for the union of the Amazon founder, one of the wealthiest men in the world, and the former news anchor turned media personality whose career had been marked by charisma, ambition, and an undeniable magnetism in every public setting. Lauren walked through the venue like she had always belonged in this rarefied air, wearing the confidence of someone who had navigated the heights of Hollywood, the worlds of sports and entertainment, and now the highest levels of global business, yet beneath the glimmer of designer gowns and discreetly secured entrances. There was a story much older than this Italian celebration, a story of love alliances and powerful men who had each played their role in the narrative of Lauren Sanchez. Before Jeff Bezos, there had been Patrick Whitesell, a Hollywood power agent whose name commanded respect in every corner of the entertainment industry. Their marriage from 2005 to 2019 had been a union that combined influence, beauty, and an insider status that many in Los Angeles would envy together. They raised 2 children, building a family while navigating the demands of careers that thrived on constant movement and relentless networking. And before Whitesell, there was her relationship with Tony Gonzalez, the former NFL tight end, whose physical presence and athletic fame brought a different type of spotlight into her life. Together, they shared a son. And though the romance ended, the bond through their child endured, showing that Lauren's connections with her partners often extended beyond romance into enduring respect and mutual support. When whispers began that her new husband might in some ways be a step down compared to her exes, it wasn't meant as a slight to Bezos' immense fortune or his achievements, but rather an observation about charisma and presence, because Whitesell in particular seemed to carry an effortless grace, a charm that deepened with age, the kind of man who could walk into a room and command it without trying. And perhaps that is why, as guests sipped champagne under strings of lights and Venetian palazzos, reflected in the dark.
It's too much money to even spend in a lifetime. Do you plan to give away the majority of your wealth in your lifetime?
Yeah, I do. And the hard part is figuring out how to do it in a levered way. It's not easy. Building Amazon was not easy. It took a lot of hard work, a bunch of very smart teammates, and I'm finding, and I think Lauren's finding the same thing, that philanthropy is very similar.
The press corps kept at bay by tight security. Yet even with the picturesque backdrop, some attendees quietly admitted to finding the celebration strangely subdued. A beautiful stage with a muted performance, as though the couple wanted to keep the event elegant, but not overly emotional. And in that restrained atmosphere, speculation grew. That perhaps the real spectacle was not in the wedding itself, but in the life that would follow, a life where Lauren would now be tethered not just to the man she loved, but to a fortune and public profile that would bring both unimaginable privileges and constant scrutiny. And as the last night in Venice faded into memory, replaced by private jets whisking guests back to their lives, the canals returned to their quiet rhythm, the palaces once again belonging to the city itself. But for Lauren Sanchez, the echoes of those days would follow her, carrying with them the question of whether she had stepped into her greatest love story yet, or whether, in the eyes of some, her heart had known something more thrilling in the chapters before Jeff Bezos. From the moment the first whispers of Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez's Venice wedding began to circulate among the upper tiers of celebrity circles, it was clear this was not going to be an ordinary celebration of love, but rather a spectacle that would straddle the line between private intimacy and public fascination. The kind of event where every guest list leak, every choice of decor, every angle of paparazzi shots would be analyzed, dissected, and reinterpreted for weeks to come. Venice was an inspired choice for the couple, a city that in itself is a living symbol of beauty, resilience, and history, a floating world where time moves differently, and where love stories, both real and imagined, have been told for centuries. But it was also a location that allowed Bezos and Sanchez to tightly control the guest experience. Every arrival was choreographed. Every photo opportunity carefully curated. The city's narrow, winding canals became pathways to secrecy as motorboats ferried, Celebrities from their hotels to the palazzos and gardens where the festivities were held, while locals and tourists craned their necks hoping for a glimpse. The wedding unfolded over 3 days each with its own rhythm and tone. The opening night, a welcome dinner under the stars where the tables were dressed in lush arrangements of white flowers, and soft candlelight flickered against the water's edge, casting golden reflections that seemed to dance with the gondolas passing by. This was the night for reunions and introductions, for old friends to catch up, and for those less acquainted with the couple to quietly study them and perhaps draw their own conclusions about what made this pairing work. Day 2 was the centerpiece, the ceremony itself, held in a centuries-old Venetian villa with frescoed ceilings and a view that seemed to stretch into the very heart of the lagoon. Lauren arrived with the poise of a woman who had been in front of cameras her entire life, her gown, a vision of modern elegance that still carried the weight of tradition, her smile unwavering even as the reality of the moment washed over her. For Jeff, this was another kind of conquest, not one measured in market share or space missions, but in the very human desire for partnership, connection, and perhaps legacy. Yet as vows were exchanged and rings slipped onto fingers, some could not help but wonder about the subtler storylines playing out beneath the surface. The quiet comparisons being drawn between Bezos and the men who had come before in Lauren's life. Patrick Whitesell's name came up more than once in whispered conversations. A man who had mastered the art of aging into his power, whose connections in Hollywood ran as deep as any mogul, and who seemed to exude a natural magnetism even without the gravitational pull of billions in the bank. There were those who recalled seeing Patrick and Lauren together in their prime, their energy a mix of playful chemistry and mutual respect, the kind of pairing that felt balanced and lived in, while Tony Gonzalez brought his own unique aura into Lauren's history, an athlete whose discipline and physical presence spoke volumes even in silence. And as the night wore on, champagne flowing more freely, conversations drifting from table to table, these comparisons took on the tone of inevitability, because weddings, even the most extravagant ones, are rarely just about the moment. They are also about the narrative. The way people place the couple in the context of everything that has come before. Day 3 was perhaps the most telling. It was a brunch meant to ease guests back into their everyday lives. Before they scattered back to Los Angeles, New York, and beyond, it was less formal, more relaxed. But in that loosened atmosphere came more candid observations. Some guests spoke openly about how the wedding, though undeniably beautiful, had lacked a certain spark, as though the couple had been more focused on perfect execution than on creating an atmosphere of unrestrained joy. Others defended the tone, suggesting that this was simply Lauren and Jeff's style, polished, controlled, thoughtful in its presentation, but always aware of how every moment might play under the lens of public opinion. After all, this was not just a wedding. It was a merger of sorts, a blending of personal and public brands that would now move together in the global spotlight. The choice of Venice, the restraint in certain displays, the balance between opulence and discretion, all of it spoke to a couple who understood the stakes and wanted to project unity without inviting unnecessary spectacle. Yet even in that carefully constructed image, the human elements remained: the lingering gazes between old flames, the way certain friends gravitated toward each other, the subtle ways in which Lauren's past and present coexisted in the same room. It was in these fleeting moments that the real texture of the wedding could be found. And perhaps this is why some left with the impression that while Jeff Bezos had given Lauren Sanchez a life of unimaginable scale and influence, there was a question mark over whether he could match the intangible qualities that her exes had brought to her life, qualities that cannot be measured in net worth or headlines, but in the way a person makes you feel in the quiet, unguarded moments away from the cameras, and as the last guests boarded their boats and the Venetian sunlight shimmered on the water, the city seemed to exhale, returning to its own timeless rhythm. While somewhere in the heart of it all, Lauren and Jeff began the first hours of married life, carrying with them the weight of public fascination and the private knowledge of how their story would now be told in the years to come. As of 2025, Patrick Whitesell is reportedly 60 years old, yet the number seems almost impossible to reconcile with the way he presents himself, because whether it is the cut of his suits, the easy confidence in his posture, or the unmistakable spark in his eyes, he looks like a man who has learned not only how to live well, but how to carry his years as an asset, rather than a burden. And while it is no secret that having financial security can smooth away certain hardships of aging, there is also something deeper at play here. A vitality that cannot be bought even by the richest man in the world. And though Whitesell's fortune does not reach the astronomical heights of Jeff Bezos, it remains substantial enough to place him firmly in the upper echelons of global wealth, thanks in part to his years as the executive chairman of Endeavor Group Holdings, where he helped shape the modern entertainment landscape and moved with ease through the corridors of power in Hollywood in the years since his split from Lauren Sanchez. Patrick has not retreated from the public eye, nor has he seemed to dwell in the shadow of their high-profile marriage. Instead, he has stepped confidently into a new chapter, one defined by personal contentment and a different kind of partnership. His marriage in 2021 to Australian actress and model Pia Miller brought a new lightness to his public image. The two often photographed together looking effortlessly stylish and deeply connected. Their relationship marked by moments that seem unforced and genuine, from low-key vacations to red carpet appearances that exude both glamour and comfort. And in May of 2025, when the couple attended the Vanity Fair Oscar party in Beverly Hills, it was as if the room itself leaned toward them, a testament not only to Patrick's enduring influence, but to the way Pia complements it with her own warmth and elegance. They moved through the crowd like people who had nothing to prove yet everything, to enjoy exchanging easy smiles with fellow guests, lingering for conversations that seemed to flow without pretense. And it is in these moments that observers draw the inevitable contrast between Patrick and Jeff, not as competitors in wealth, but as different archetypes of what it means to stand beside a woman like Lauren Sanchez, one built on the foundation of shared history and charisma, the other on the promise of scale and global stature. And while Lauren's life with Jeff is now filled with the reach of private islands, super yachts, and ventures that stretch into outer space, Patrick's chapter with Pia seems rooted in a kind of grounded luxury where the richness lies in the balance between personal freedom and public prominence. And so, as the flashbulbs faded at the Vanity Fair party and Patrick and Pia disappeared into the Los Angeles night, it became clear that time had not dulled his edge, but rather refined it into something quieter, more potent. A reminder that while fortunes may be compared, charisma is its own currency, one that Patrick Whitesell continues to spend with effortless precision. In the weeks following Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez's Venetian wedding, as glossy magazine spreads immortalized the glittering moments of their 3-day affair, and the couple returned to the rhythm of life aboard yachts, private jets, and secluded estates, the conversation around their union did not settle into quiet acceptance. Instead, it seemed to splinter into two threads, one celebrating the match as a pinnacle of power, romance, and influence, and the other quietly weighing it against the chapters of Lauren's past, a past that could not be erased by even the most lavish displays of wealth. Patrick Whitesell's reemergence into public view with Pia Miller in the same season as Lauren's wedding only heightened the comparisons here. Was a man in his 60s moving through the Vanity Fair Oscar party, as though time had folded in on itself, leaving him ageless, magnetic, and entirely in his element. And while Jeff Bezos commanded a different kind of attention, the calculated precision of a man used to running empires, there was a growing sense among observers that charisma and wealth, while sometimes intertwined, were not interchangeable in the human heart. Social media became the quiet echo chamber for these musings, with side-by-side images of Lauren on the canals of Venice and Patrick under the soft lighting of Beverly Hills, sparking debates that ranged from the lighthearted to the deeply speculative. It was not that anyone doubted Lauren's feelings for Jeff, nor that her life with him lacked excitement. After all, few can claim mornings on one coast of the world and dinners on another, or evenings spent under the endless expanse of a starlit deck somewhere in the Mediterranean. Yet for those who had seen her with Patrick, or even Tony Gonzalez, there was a memory of a different kind of spark, a laughter that seemed to rise more easily, an energy that felt less curated. Perhaps this was simply the nature of nostalgia, the human tendency to romanticize what is past. But in Hollywood, where images are currency and perception is power, such narratives take on lives of their own. And as Lauren settled into married life with Jeff, each public appearance was filtered through the lens of her history at a gala in New York. She wore a gown that drew unanimous praise, but even then, headlines found space to mention her former marriage. At a charity dinner in Los Angeles, whispers surfaced about who might have been in the room and whether old connections were being rekindled or carefully avoided. This constant thread of comparison was not unique to Lauren. It is the fate of many women who have lived their lives in the public eye. Yet in her case, the stark contrasts between Jeff's calculated business persona and Patrick's seemingly effortless social fluency made the conversation more persistent than usual and somewhere beneath the surface. Perhaps even Lauren herself understood the duality she had stepped into on one side, a partnership that offered her reach security and a shared vision for ventures that could span decades on the other. A lingering association with a man whose presence still drew comment years after their marriage had ended in Venice, the wedding had felt like a closing chapter. But now in the glare of the world stage, it was clear the book was still being written, with past and present occupying the same narrative space. And so, as summer of 2025 unfolded and the couple made appearances in Monaco on Bezos' yacht and at exclusive gatherings in Malibu, the question continued to hang in the air, not spoken, aloud, but felt in the spaces between photographs and the pauses in interviews whether this union would stand apart on its own terms or forever live in the shadow of the loves that came before. In the quiet weeks after the lavish lights of Venice faded and the last of the champagne glasses were packed away, Lauren Sanchez and Jeff Bezos stepped into the reality of married life, a reality that for most couples comes with shared schedules, grocery lists, and everyday rituals, but for them unfolded across the shifting landscapes of private islands, Mediterranean waters, and penthouse suites in cities where the skyline itself seemed to welcome their arrival, yet even in this rarefied existence. There were undercurrents subtle but persistent, the kind that follow high-profile couples who marry under the watchful gaze of the world. For Lauren, the adjustment was not about learning to live in luxury. She had long navigated circles, where influence and wealth were part of the scenery. It was about blending her own rhythm of life with Jeff's, the measured pace of a man who built empires from algorithms and logistics, who approached each day like a chessboard thinking 3 moves ahead. For some, that discipline was inspiring. For others, it was inescapably calculated. And while Lauren thrived in environments fueled by energy, spontaneity, and connection, there were moments when the tempo of Jeff's approach to life felt more structured than she was used to. Not cold, but intentional in a way that sometimes made the glamour feel choreographed. As the summer of 2025 rolled forward, their appearances together became a collage of curated images, the two on the deck of a super yacht laughing over glasses of wine, Lauren in a flowing dress at a gala, Jeff in a perfectly tailored suit at a tech conference. But in each frame, the audience searched for something beyond the polish, a glimpse of that unguarded spark that had once defined her past relationships. It was not lost on anyone that this was the season when Patrick Whitesell seemed more publicly present than he had been in years. His photographs with Pia Miller carrying a kind of lightness that was hard to ignore in the same news cycles as Lauren and Jeff's more formal portraits. The contrast played out like parallel films, one focused on opulence and scale, the other on charm and ease, and while no one outside their inner circle could speak to the private truths of Lauren and Jeff's marriage, the comparisons lingered, shaping the way the public consumed their story in quiet moments. Far from the cameras, Lauren's life was now interwoven with projects that Jeff envisioned, from philanthropic ventures to ambitious expansions of his space exploration company, each one demanding time, energy, and a kind of strategic commitment that left less room for the unpredictability she had once embraced. Yet for all the speculation those close to her insisted there was a genuine bond at the core of their relationship, a shared curiosity about the world and a mutual respect for each other's ambitions, still in the court of public opinion, where narrative is as much about feeling as fact. The conversation was rarely about shared values. It was about chemistry, about whether the woman who once walked red carpets with a Hollywood power agent or attended games with an NFL star could find the same electric current in the meticulously organized world of a billionaire tech visionary. And so as the year moved toward autumn and the couple planned their next appearances, the question remained not whether their marriage would last, but whether it would ever fully escape the long shadow of the loves that had come before. As autumn 2025 settled in, and the golden light of the season replaced the shimmer of Venetian summer, Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez continued to move through a world most could only imagine their days marked by travel business summits, charitable galas, and fleeting moments of escape on the decks of yachts or in the private corners of luxury resorts. Yet with every public appearance, the conversations surrounding them seemed to circle back to the same place. A delicate dance between admiration for their shared power and fascination with the ghosts of Lauren's, past the photographs from their honeymoon period, now sat side by side in digital feeds with images of Patrick Whitesell and Pia Miller, their lives so different yet bound together in the public consciousness by one common thread: Lauren herself, And it was here in this constant juxtaposition that the enduring narrative took shape, not one of competition or rivalry, but of perception and memory, the way audiences hold on to images of who someone used to be and measure them against who they have become. In Venice, the wedding had been framed as a definitive moment, the culmination of a love story 2 years in the making. But in the months that followed, it became something more complex. A chapter in a book still being written with characters from earlier pages, reappearing not in person, but in the minds of those who watched from afar. For Lauren, the path forward was one of balance, learning to inhabit the role of Jeff Bezos' wife, while still retaining the energy that had made her magnetic. Long before she stepped into his world, her life now unfolded in dual layers, one visible, polished, and controlled the other. Personal, intimate, and perhaps still tied to the rhythms of a past life where connection was less scripted and more instinctive. And as for Jeff, he remained what he had always been, a figure of staggering ambition and focus, someone for whom every decision was part of a larger strategy. Whether in business or in life, together they formed a union that could command attention in any room. Yet in quieter conversations outside their presence, the question persisted not as a criticism, but as a curiosity. Could a relationship built in such a structured and highly visible world ever capture the same unfiltered spark that comes when two people are free from the weight of public expectation? The answer may never be clear to anyone but them. And perhaps that is the true ending to this chapter, that for all the opulence and speculation, for all the side-by-side comparisons and lingering memories, the reality of their love story belongs to them alone. And as 2025 moved toward its close, with new headlines waiting to be written and new appearances yet to be made, one truth remained certain. Lauren Sanchez's journey from her early relationships to her marriage with Jeff Bezos had been anything but ordinary, and whatever the future held, her story would continue to be told in whispers, photographs, and the unshakable curiosity of a world that had been watching from the very beginning.
This video covers legal allegations in a news context. All claims are from official filings and no guilt is implied until proven in court. Please keep all discussions respectful. Allegations are not facts until proven in court.